And in closing, we're going to have the legend himself come up to close us out. Gene Lentzner has been involved in social service, education, civil rights, and human relations for almost his entire life, with over 60 years of advocacy promoting racial, religious, and cultural understanding. At a time when his efforts were often met with great resistance, he remained dedicated. His exceptional work in the area of human relations at a grassroots level was the impetus for establishing the Gene Lentzner Human Relations Award 28 years ago. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Gene Lentzner.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For 26 years, consecutive years, I was the sole presenter of this award. And even though it involved a lot of work, I want you to know that this was one of the most satisfying and humbling experiences in my life. In the past years, this task has been taken over by our staff. And they have done an incredible job to continue the program, and I want to congratulate them. You saw what they did this evening. The constant question in the past has always been, where would we continue to find these very special humanitarians who are willing to work at the grassroots level without reward in their spare time to help the most needy people in the community. However, I believe we now know, it takes 28 years, by the way, we now know that they reside here amongst us in every neighborhood, and that they constitute one of our greatest resources. I also want to comment on the current state of human relations. For those of us, there's not too many of us, but for those of us who have personally experienced the passing of the Civil Rights Act in 1964 that outlawed federal discrimination laws. Next year, the 1965, the Voting Rights Act, and listen to this, that allowed minorities and women after 196 years to go to the polls and vote. The Supreme Court decision, the Loving decision, which you're going to see a movie about this coming year, I urge you to see it, that permitted marriage across racial lines. And the many laws all over the country granting the right to marry and work with regard to our GLTBQ citizens. We can testify, those who lived through these 52 years, we can testify that the last 52 years in America have been one of the greatest expansions of equality and justice in the history of this great nation of ours. What is discouraging, and I have to comment on this, what is discouraging is to witness the current resurgence of hate speech and hate groups in America. You know, you work your entire life to accomplish greater equality and justice for all the people in the country, and then all of a sudden it stops. And you wonder, my God, what did I do all these years? What was it all about? We now see many attempts, as you know, to take away the right to vote to many, many people all over the country. Many, many laws to limit the rights of the gay community, which we thought was an incredible achievement when it occurred. And the great question that I have for all of you is, when do we get back on track? When do we get back on track in achieving equality and justice for all of our citizens, not just some of them? Well, I have to tell you a little story, and that's the end of my speech. facing a similar situation, believe it or not, 10 years ago. Members of the board met and they pledged that they would attempt to put an end to the derogatory jokes and the hateful statements being told both in our private and public settings. And I have to be honest with you, including at our humanitarian awards dinners. We had people who wouldn't even attend these dinners because of that. So in my case, I can only talk for that, I first addressed the matter where I played golf. In this setting, it was a natural practice to tell jokes that ridiculed and demeaned minorities. So one day, because of the pledge, I finally spoke up and I said, I was offended by these stories, and you cannot believe the fury that this statement generated. I then extended the same objection at various parties that I attended, with my wife in most cases. And there the results was even more explosive. In fact, there were some cases that I actually broke up the party. But fortunately, and I'm very proud of this, fortunately more and more people came to understand how such hurtful language simply perpetuated prejudice, and that it was no longer acceptable to speak this way. In public or in private, it didn't make any difference. But I want to tell you this evening one more thing, and that is what we learned about this little experience, this little example. We learned that each one of us can make a change. And our guest speaker today spoke to that subject. Gandhi expressed this same idea in his writings, and we were so impressed by it at CCEJ that by saying, you can make the change, that it's now CCEJ's motto. So tonight, I'm going to suggest that it's about time that all of us speak up again and help restore decency in our public discourse. And that's my message to you. I want to thank all of you for coming this evening. I want to thank some of our past honorees for being here this evening. I want to thank all of you who mentioned all the other honorees who weren't here this evening, but still were honored that. And I want to wish that you come back again. This is a wonderful, wonderful project, and I hope it continues. And thanks and good evening.